Alright. Okay, so if any of you are expecting like 15 minutes on actual new technologies and technologies you can implement in your classes, this is not really what our 15-minute forum about. It's more something that's research-based. It's more looking towards using new technology from the research that we've done. So our main research was around the use of talk for literacy in practical subjects. Obviously, literacy is quite hard in subjects like PE because we don't actually get the students to sit down and write. But this actual bit of research was the first time I saw a bit of Year 7 writing their assessment, and I was absolutely shocked. I couldn't believe at how low some of the literacy was. So basically we picked out a small sample group. Each of us picked out about 5 students who had low literacy from primary school, and we then decided that we would, as a practical subject, base around talk as their literacy, so how they can actually verbalise their literacy, and what we could do in practical subjects to actually improve upon that, and what strategies we could do, what we do now, and actually whether it's suitable towards those students or if it just makes it really hard for them. So to this target group we sent out with Denise Chick, and they went on to her. We didn't really want to affect any of those results because we know that if we went in there and said, do you enjoy PE? They'll go, yeah, love it. Whereas Miss Chick sat there doing it, they all said that they hate it. So it was a little bit easier. So the things that we asked about was how do you feel about speaking to a whole PE group? There's a lot of time we're so time constrained, especially in PE when we've got change time. It's so hard to kind of put aside 10 minutes to just have a discussion, especially if you're out in the rain and the cold, and to stop the lesson and to actually discuss things. A lot of it can end up as whole group. So we asked them how they felt about that, what helps them with talk and questioning, do they think talk's important in PE, and how well do they think they're doing in their verbal responses in our subject. So the main common themes that came out of it were, most of them thought it was important in PE, which was good. It shows that we actually do some of this in our lessons, and that they thought it was important. The majority of them weren't confident in speaking to the whole class. And considering that's what we do the most, that was quite a big kind of shock to us of what we had to do slightly differently. All of them thought they were in the middle for verbal responses, which was quite interesting because we actually thought they'd say I'm below, because they were the low literacy students. And 67% of them, which is a lot again, were unsure on how to improve their talk skills. They all enjoyed or felt that they progressed or they knew how to progress in our subject. They knew what to do to learn a new skill, whether it was practice to talk about it or whether it was the teacher helping. And they all said that they preferred the idea of small group tasks and partnered tasks and stuff where they could discuss with each other rather than standing up in a group or telling others. So we had to move on to what we were going to do basically in our PE lessons to ensure that these students could fully access this kind of improvement in literacy. So we came up with ideas that we could actually implement across all activity areas in PE, and came up with these, and these are the times and dates and the activity areas that I focused on. So it was a Year 7 group, and because of the way the curriculum works, we're kind of stuck on an activity. I don't teach them for the whole of their 5 lessons, I share them with another teacher, so I only see them twice a fortnight, and therefore that's why all of them are based around football and rugby. So that makes it really hard. It was wet, it was raining, it was cold, I need them to be really active. So a lot of these were quite tricky to do, but some of them were really useful. So carousel questioning, which we use a lot, think, pay, share, we all use, but then we started to move on to stuff that we don't necessarily do. The iPad talk time. We've invested in iPads in the department, so each teacher's got one. We started to send off small groups, mainly focusing on our target literacy group with an iPad, and they went off with certain discussion points from lessons, and they had to actually film their discussions. So they just had conversations in groups of 3 or 4. They would put the iPad up, press record, and they'd take a selfie of themselves having a discussion, then we could go back and actually look at their discussions and how they were doing. All practice, no talk. That was a way of us actually seeing how they would progress with no talk and actually not focusing on the verbal responses, not focusing on their literacy. And actually, practically, they did really well with this, but they had no idea how they were going to progress. If someone came in to observe me and said, right, how are you going to get up to level 6? They had no idea because we hadn't talked about it. Allocating extended thinking time, which can feel quite awkward, giving them that extra time and actually timing myself and going, right, I'm going to give you an extra minute here. Just stood there in silence and letting them, actually sometimes not having much to say and just forcing them to take that extra minute. Alternative roles, stuff like spokesperson, whether it's someone videoing, whether there's someone as a scribe, someone doing kind of newspaper articles, sitting, taking notes or video recording, I said, commentators, news reporters, just give them loads of different roles and different ways that they can kind of access these verbal responses. And then types of talk, which I shared on today. It's 10th today, or was that yesterday? Yesterday. I didn't do it yesterday. So my last thing to do is to film talk in my lesson and to actually see what types of talk occur in my lesson, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, whether it's constructive, whether it's all about me talking, whether it's the students talking, or whether they're just off task and talking about computer games.
In terms of what I've implemented, some very similar things to John, but very different as well. So we started with dance as our indoor module, which made it a little bit easier to have some talking time. So I found, from looking at the questionnaires that we've done, that quite a lot of them don't like being put on the spot. So doing Think, Pair, Share gave me a little bit of time to actually have a discussion, and then I do no hands up in my classroom, so it's very much use that time to actually talk about what the question is, and then they can be prepared to answer it. Thinking about when we go on to, we're looking down here, the use of keywords to develop feedback and the use of the iPad for assessment. So when we're doing that, they'd use the iPad to record each other, and then think about how they'd use some of the keywords with my literacy focus in the lesson to then build on their talk within that module. Within outdoor lessons, it's very much trying to do it as quick as possible, but also still get the quality out of it. So similar things, looking at focus groups, so they've got a specific question that they might look at, and then sharing those ideas within the group. Teacher questioning, so as we've gone on to netball and I've had a student teacher leading those lessons, I've been able to then pull students out and actually have a little bit of a discussion and question certain individuals, which has helped me think about how they've actually developed from where they were in September, very nervous individuals, not wanting to talk at all, to actually, if you question them and probe them, they're actually coming up with what you want to think about. And I don't know why I've got people in there, because yeah. So what we've done so far, pupils have identified that talking helps their confidence. So like I've already said, loads of students have grown in confidence, especially as they've come into this term. I think they've started to find their feet, especially within PE lessons. Develop the ability to process different ideas in which we give them. So within my netball lessons and tag rugby, especially giving them more exploration, so they can go off and have those discussions within those groups to think about how they can come to the overall conclusion. Definitely working in smaller groups. So the group that I've chosen specifically, they'd work together, so it makes it easier for them to then bounce off each other within their talking groups, and for me to then go over and question them. And like John's using his, which I'm going to use next time I see them with the selfie with the iPad, so then they can do more focus with things like that. Develop thinking time and talk as part of lessons is something that we're going to continue to build into our curriculum planning for the rest of the year and for next year. Thinking about how we can make it more accessible through different technologies, especially when we're outside, how can we make it quick but still reach the goal we want to do, and then build that into our units of work. Anything
No, I don't think so. I think as well, in terms of the time of the year that we've done this, has not been great. We're outdoors. A lot of the activities that we do this time of year are outdoors. They're based around, like for the boys, it's football and rugby. A lot of this lends itself to being indoors, and I think now if we can actually develop our units of work, now that we know all the stuff that works with our students, to develop that in like a badminton or a gymnastics or trampolining or something like that, where it's quieter and the students are a bit more, I don't know, we're kind of relaxing a little bit more, and they've got a lot more time to actually question and assess and kind of have discussions. I think it will be even more effective. Even as it is, it's been really effective just watching how students have developed. So.
It'll be interesting going into the summer term, it's a little bit warmer outside and they're feeling they can have time to sit down and have that discussion, and we can do some carousel questioning outside and feel they might enjoy it a little bit more and engage a little bit further in that.
Yeah.
So we've started to think about where to next. Obviously assessing levels, with Life About Levels next year, we're thinking about how we can bring in key terminology without actually specifically linking it using the levels overall, if that makes sense. So we're thinking about iPad. Obviously we use a GoPro quite a lot, so we can't use Iris over on the backfield because of internet connection. So thinking about how we can use the GoPro in lessons to record and decide how the students use and talk. There's discussions about a drone. Imagine having that camera flying around without feeling controversial. How we could use that to look at ideas of talk within lessons, so that we don't have to be there, we don't have to say, well, here's the GoPro, we can just program it, say, right, stand there, and they can have a little discussion with the camera.
We're thinking about linking this in with the types of talk, and actually if you've got these small carousel groups all over the place discussing different things, it's actually really hard to work out, are they being productive, are they talking about the right things, and we can scout around them and kind of probe them and ask questions, but we're always going to be talking about the right things when you're there. So that's why that idea came up, to have those carousel groups actually filmed. And it's the only way that we can think of it being done outdoors and easily without Iris, which isn't that.
I think even with Iris in a classroom, it's still a little bit difficult to...
Yeah, true. So the main thing we're looking at from here is to basically what technology can we use in a practical setting. So the iPad, it isn't ideal, it's expensive, it's not waterproof, we have to keep our eyes on it, or they don't go missing. And it's the same with the GoPro, it's even more expensive. We've only got one of them that was used for assessment. There's not really anything that we've found or used during this that we've actually thought, yeah, that's something really good to invest in. And the whole part of this research is that we have created some kind of investment, some funding, that we can actually spend on technology to aid what we're doing. So the main thing now that we're looking for is, what do we purchase actually? What's going to be productive technology-wise to use? So we might be looking towards, I don't know, Russell maybe for some ideas. Stuff like the flip cameras are really helpful, but we feel like they have to be waterproof, they have to be a bit more user-friendly. It's not a great interface, something that we can actually see the students talking, because otherwise it's just voices and we're not sure who they are. So if anybody has got any ideas on that that's going to overcome those barriers towards introducing it into a practical area, it would be very helpful.
Linking to that, we were thinking about just dictaphones, but then we thought it'd be really useful to see the body language of the children and actually understand what they're doing. Are they just stood there and not actually having conversations face to face with the other individuals within the group? So it's going to be something that we're going to continue to look at and see how we can overcome that.
Yeah. That was done. The last thing is we only met yesterday, so there's a few things that haven't gone onto this. It's mainly around the improvement in these students that we targeted. So actually looking at, actually sitting and going, right, hold on a minute, have they actually improved? And if I think about the 5 students that I've got in my class, they've gone from literally not being able to get a response from them. It's hard to tell whether that's just natural progression over a year or 6 months, whatever it is, or whether it is actually down to systematically targeting these students with things that are going to actually develop them, or is it what they're doing in English or geography, or so it is hard to tell, but we do feel like there has been some headway in it and we have made a difference in a practical setting.
Another thing I implemented with one of my groups, we did a questionnaire just on like their netball understanding, so whether they could actually put the knowledge down onto paper and then when I give that back to them, whether we can have that conversation, are they able to talk the answers to me rather than actually getting down on paper, which is going to be more, it's going to be better for us to understand compared to just looking at their English understanding of language. So that can they actually pick out what identify means or describe and locate on like a netball court. So yeah, anyone got any questions?
Just a comment really, which is about teaching students and giving them the skills to talk about their learning is going to be really key in evidencing progress and deep learning, when not just for Ofsted but in any kind of setting. You know, and I think you've hit some really key buttons there. You know, getting them to talk about their own learning and explain and understand terminology. It's really key work, and it is this business of getting over the hurdle of maybe the technology now and the capturing of it and holding it. But something you've done quite well in PE, capturing good practice so kids can go and watch something and come back and practice again and improve. You know, you've had to overcome these sorts of technical issues over a number of years now, haven't you? But you've been quite creative.
We still don't have internet access over there.
No.
You know, out even in the sports hall or the gym or anything, we haven't got anything like that. But that would really aid it if we could get that, because half the apps and things that we would like to use for filming and analysis, we can't actually do because they're online apps.
Yeah.
So that is one huge barrier for us at the moment. But
we're getting on it. We're still on it. Okay, shall we give them a round of applause?